So welcome to this morning's webinar on understanding timesheets in NetSuite. So presenting today will be myself, Wayne Crosland, and Tristan Day, our General Manager. So the agenda for today, so we'll do an introduction on Infinet Cloud. We'll also then talk about capturing time in spreadsheets. We'll look about capturing time in NetSuite Employee Centre. And we'll look at capturing time in Infinet Cloud MyPay, followed by a live demo, and then we'll have question and answers at the end. So I've been with Infinet Cloud for 4 years now, and I've been involved in the majority of our UK payroll implementations. And what I've noticed over the last probably 6 months is an increase in the number of customers that are inquiring about what timesheeting options they have. So today's webinar is to address those options and to introduce Infinet Cloud MyPay. So a bit of background. So we've been around since 2009. We are part of the Suite Developer Network, which is a framework for partners to develop applications specifically for NetSuite. We've been recognized twice by NetSuite as the International Partner of the Year. We have 5 staff based in the UK, and we have 23 staff globally. We have over 750 customers, and we are Suite Success certified. Our Suite apps are purpose-built for NetSuite, and we only work with NetSuite. And we have 2 Suite apps. We have the Infinet Cloud Payroll, which is a native Suite app, allowing 100% of your payroll function to be performed inside NetSuite. And our Payroll Suite app is the highest rated native Suite app globally. And we have Infinet Cloud MyPay, which is a hybrid Suite app that extends NetSuite functionality, including time tracking, to staff that don't have access to NetSuite. You can find both of our Suite apps on suiteapp.com. So here are a few of our UK customers. Many of these have various forms of time tracking. Anyone that has NetSuite is ideally suited for our Payroll and MyPay Suite apps. Our customers range in size from our smallest, which is 10 employees, up to our largest, which is 3,200 employees, which is Tilney Smith and Williamson in the middle there. So let's look at the challenges of timesheets. There are 4 parts to a timesheet process: the employees or timesheeters, the time approvers, the finance team, and lastly, the customer. It is the first stage we will be focusing on today, and that is the capturing and entering of time into NetSuite. In an ideal world, the timesheets will be entered correctly, approved, passed on to finance, will then process, create the reports and invoices for the customers, all in a timely fashion, with minimal checking required. And if the time is to be billed to a customer, the invoice will be sent for payment at the month following. Happy days, but as we all know, in the real world, the very nature of timesheeting has a cruel combination of challenges. Timesheets require non-finance staff to initiate a critical financial process, and it all starts at this point. Timesheets are immensely important to billing and reporting, and it can also have a large impact on paying staff for the hours they have worked. So it is critical that the time entered posts to the correct nominal accounts, projects, customers, and against the NetSuite classifications, department, class, locations, case, task, and events. The finance team has complete knowledge and control of all the posting classifications, but no insight into the actual time worked. And the teams entering timesheets have all the info of the time worked, but usually little knowledge or understanding of the corresponding financial postings. And all this, at the end of the day, time is money, and the actual task of filling in timesheets itself is taking up valuable time. That time could be used to deliver the services, the value add, or the billable work. So the flow-on effects of not entering timesheets correctly create all sorts of downstream issues. Approvers and finance teams have to go through the multiple records to correct. This takes time, as each incorrect entry needs to be investigated and corrected. And this in turn can lead to delays in billing and reporting. Staff may need to wait a later pay run to be paid for the hours they have worked. Customers may get billed late and end up paying a month late, let alone the frustration of not getting their invoices in the expected timeframes and the obvious downstream effects on cash flow that this has. So if this all sounds too familiar to you, you already know you need a solution which gives workers the ability to enter time quickly and accurately, well within defined parameters to ensure that the team can get on with their work and the finance team can retain the level of control they need without having to manually enter or check every time entry. So the good news is that as a NetSuite customer, you've already made the investment into the right system. Its cloud infrastructure, unified database, workflow engine, and reminder portlets, these all provide the perfect platform for you to grow, improve visibility of key data by removing unnecessary manual processes. It's likely these are the reasons as to why you selected NetSuite in the first place. And having implemented people-focused solutions for over 750 NetSuite customers globally, we've probably encountered every requirement, process, and budget you can imagine. So capturing time in NetSuite. There are two key considerations. Firstly, how many staff do you need to enter timesheets? And secondly, how are you managing that time? Is the time variable or consistent? Do you have shift patterns? Do they have defined increments? For example, being 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday? Or are there multiple shifts with variable rates, additional entitlements such as travel time, subsistence allowances? Is there overtime involved? In our experience, there tends to be three main options to consider for managing time sheets in NetSuite. Firstly, we have Excel or Google Spreadsheets. Then we have the NetSuite Employee Centre. And thirdly, a suite app such as our MyPay solution. And I do encourage you to stay to the end to watch the demo on that. So let's look at what option would best suit your time sheeting needs. So the first one is using spreadsheets to capture NetSuite time. So this is a very common option that many of our customers use. It's free as long as you have Microsoft Office or Google Sheets, and it doesn't require any additional NetSuite licensing. It is extremely flexible and you can enter anything you wish. You can even lock it down to an extent to at least provide some level of control for the timesheeters and allow for importation into NetSuite. But the entries need to be error-free or the import process will fail. So here we have an example of John Smith and the spreadsheet he fills out to record his time throughout the week. As you can see, the task of entering time against a project, and depending on the complexity, can end up being a very arduous process fraught with possibilities of incorrect entries. The spreadsheet needs to be designed in order to capture what is required from a finance team's perspective, so that they can then process the data accordingly. As new projects come on board or new case task events are created, the spreadsheet has to continually evolve to keep up with these changes. The poor timesheeter needs to know what to enter. Sure, the spreadsheet can be locked down, but someone will need to keep it updated, and the staff need to know what the new changes are. So once the timesheets have been completed and sent through for approval, the next step would be to consolidate all the employees' timesheets into a single view for importation into NetSuite. For NetSuite, you will require the format to be one-time entry per line. So the process of collating all the various spreadsheets and transposing into a format that can be consumed by NetSuite can be an enormous task. So in all honesty, we would never recommend spreadsheets for timesheets, but we live in the real world and we know that something is better than nothing. We know that many of you will be using spreadsheets and we feel it is appropriate to discuss some of its challenges. So here are the pros and the cons of spreadsheets. So the pros, it doesn't require any additional NetSuite licensing. It's flexible and can capture anything. The spreadsheet's locked down, and if it's mapped correctly, we can import it directly into NetSuite. But here are the cons. It's not the most secure environment to store employee or customer details, so you may have GDPR issues to contend with. They can be deleted or overwritten, either deliberately or accidentally, and there is limited audit trail capability to see who has made what changes. Lastly, there is no integration between the spreadsheet and with NetSuite. So all project information, customer information, rates, employee details, they all have to be manually entered into the spreadsheet. This can take considerable time and is prone to errors. and we combine both of these facts, the downstream issues caused can multiply exponentially as your volumes increase. But if you have 5 people entering timesheets with minimal classifications, spreadsheets could be fine. As I mentioned earlier, when deciding what is best, it's how many staff do you need to enter timesheets and how is your time managed. So that leads on to the second option, and that's the NetSuite Employee Centre license. So the NetSuite Employee Centre license is a purpose-built solution which provides a secure interface for employees to enter timesheets directly into NetSuite. Timesheeters can select the appropriate classifications, customers, projects, shift rates, all driven directly from your NetSuite core setup, allowing for control over what information is entered and allowing this to flow seamlessly through the NetSuite workflow and approval processes and be picked up by finance, processing, reporting, and billing. It's a great option. But as with spreadsheets, what are the pros and cons? So the pros, it's part of your core NetSuite setup. It's easy to enter time and it removes as many steps as possible. It gives you complete control. It's suitable for businesses with time being worked, which is completely in line with your NetSuite system. You can use both the desktop interface and the NetSuite app to enter time. All data is controlled by the financial and project setup within NetSuite. Submissions, approvals, and queries are automatically managed as part of your core NetSuite approvals process. What are the cons? Well, firstly, each timesheeter will require a NetSuite Employee Centre license. The Employee Centre is particularly strong for organizations who work within a well-defined and stable environment, i.e. well-defined projects with clear tasks, structure, and rigid timing classifications. For example, managing time in hours and days. It does not tend to offer flexibility for deviations from standard timesheets, such as overtime or varied working patterns. Time is entered as hours worked, does not include such items such as start and end times. And it requires users to calculate and classify their own time against different billing items should they wish to include out-of-hour works or overtime. But the Employee Centre provides a terrific solution for businesses, but there may be some situations where your business rules may not align with how the solution captures time. Should you require some more flexibility in terms of the way you capture and manage time, but still want NetSuite to remain as the primary solution, hold tight, as we'll discuss why MyPay is probably perfect for you. So let's now look at MyPay, our suite app for capturing timesheets. So MyPay is a hybrid suite app that is still system-driven, purpose-built, still secure, and still ensuring data is controlled by and visible in NetSuite. So it presents a unique offering to our NetSuite customers. Normally, when you look to introduce a third-party suite app to manage a process like timesheets or expenses, you often gain functionality in one area at the expense of the management and visibility of data within NetSuite, i.e. the new solution is built specifically to manage the process, but it does so standalone, meaning that all of the action happens elsewhere. A new interface, another repository for data, the opposite of why you invested in NetSuite. So this often results in additional expenses to take critical data out of your core NetSuite setup, whilst re-engineering the approval processes and reports you had already invested time and money in NetSuite. As a built for NetSuite hybrid app, MyPay gives you the best of both worlds. The solution does manage part of the process externally to NetSuite. However, taking a NetSuite first approach, MyPay exists almost as a sidecar to your NetSuite system. Everything is still driven by NetSuite, and all data is shared automatically between the systems. And this ensures that your users can enter time as you need them to in the real world. And MyPay processes this and outputs that data in a format which NetSuite can process, satisfying the needs of the business at every stage. MyPay also offers options for time entry, including predefined shift patterns, total hours worked, taking into account start and end times. And this allows us to simplify the time entry process as we can apply rules which interpret the time entries. So as with spreadsheets and the NetSuite Employee Centre, what are the pros and cons of MyPay? So the pros, it functions as part of your NetSuite setup. There's a mobile and desktop version available. All data is controlled by the financial and project setup within NetSuite. Submissions, approvals, and queries are automated or automatically managed as part of your core NetSuite approvals process. Plus, it includes the option to introduce another level of authorization prior to reaching NetSuite if you wish. There's flexibility to enter and manage time based on real-world scenarios of existing NetSuite customers across all industries, and we'll show you that shortly in the demo. Can handle predefined shift patterns, overtime, employee entitlement calculation as standard, and there's autosave functionality to remove the risk of the work being lost in the field. What are the cons? Well, it's not a NetSuite module, it's a hybrid suite app, but it is built specifically for NetSuite, certified by NetSuite as built for NetSuite, and only enhances your investment in NetSuite. So at this point, I'm now going to hand you over to Tristan, who's going to show you a few key scenarios of MyPay in a live system. Following that, we'll show you what MyPay costs and touch on some of the other functionality it has.
Thank you, Wayne. A very succinct discussion of the different ways of capturing time in NetSuite. And now let us have a look at MyPay. Of course, when we start, we're going to start in NetSuite. As Wayne mentioned, the whole point and focus of our NetSuite first approach is to ensure that NetSuite remains the key focus and master of data in your NetSuite system. So we are going to be pushing through in real time records that are coming in from MyPay as NetSuite time bill. So we are using the existing NetSuite functionality, making sure that we are picking up data from your NetSuite account, including the employees, the customers, their projects, their tasks, and the relevant configurations on those tasks, whether they're non-billable, what the resources are defaulting for the service items, and all those sorts of things as well. And there's a few different ways that we can enter time into MyPay. You're probably familiar with the view that we've got going on here, which is the timesheet view. In each of these, if I want, I can enter a start time, end time, and a break time, or indeed I can put in a number of hours in there. And you'll notice that this is saving automatically as we are going along. So whether you're entering this in the browser, whether you're logging into it through your mobile browser, which has been designed around the obviously responsive methodology to ensure that it is seamless on a mobile device as well, we know that we're never going to lose that information. And if you have ever entered timesheets and suddenly lost that whole week that you've done before you've hit save or something like that, then I share your pain. This, of course, is the one view that we've got. We have the ability to enter things in as a list view as well, so we can break these down onto different days if we would rather have a little bit more information showing on each of those views as well. There's various other configuration options which I will come to in a moment, but one of the more advanced features and capabilities that we have is this box up here with it, which is interpreted time. So for example, if I had rules in the system that said for any one customer or any one day, and we'll give you some examples of these in a moment, if you are doing more than a certain number of hours, and whilst here we've done it on a pay type basis because the customer would get billed the same no matter how many hours were done or when those hours were done, your billing model may actually require that for out of hours, time that started after 6 p.m. or finished after 9 p.m, that out of hours support should automatically be reflected in the billing cycle for the finance team. So the service item might be an out of hours rate, which is obviously increased over what they would pay during the day or for normally scheduled requirements. So the ability to enter this time for it to be seen. And of course, if I come back in here, as we've already got that in there from NetSuite and refresh that page, we're going to see that we're already pushing that information in. It's in the approval status of open. So from MyPay, we are able to see in NetSuite that information directly reflected. So everyone doesn't have to be in MyPay or NetSuite. It has been designed around a coexisting capability so that you could have your workforce submitting timesheets through MyPay. Some of their line managers could be approving it in MyPay. Some could be approving it in NetSuite. And then, of course, it would flow through into your financial system. The capabilities we have around the configuration and how we deal with these things and how we manage the user interface. And of course, MyPay is a role-based system, as you would expect. So you can actually have this configured on a team or department basis, because we would give each of those a different role, where we can control, where the period start dates are, what the items and columns are that we are showing on the actual sheet itself. Whether we're having notifications, whether you do want start and end on that period entry, or whether or not you just want them to enter a number of hours. What are the other mandatory fields that we want on there? Do we want memos to be mandatory? If we do want to put memos, we can actually show up here with the configuration. If I turn on a memo on each field, I can actually hover over that and I can add a memo into it. Certainly that was one of my own bugbears when I use NetSuite timesheets, is if I did want to be able to use this grid view and entry, actually if I wanted to put a memo on it, I had to switch to a list view and I had to change things around. So we've taken feedback not just from our own use, but also from that of our customers. It can reference what we are seeing from the individual project tasks. So we can see what is the estimated hours versus the actual hours. And then that will display a red or green progress bar over on the left-hand side. And of course, we will also see projects. If we wanted to put that into these tags here, rather than it showing over there, we can then streamline and again look at the user experience that we're having for the individual, because it is a key requirement, as Wayne said, to get this done effectively and trying to make it as easy as possible and accurate as possible for the end user to put that in. That simplicity and that focus and accuracy will feed through and pay dividends further along in the process. So we can have multiple time and configurations for each role. We can set up various different shifts, whether it is a Monday or Friday morning with different icons that go with it. Those can be created, those can be managed. You will have an administrator role that you'll be able to look at and configure these things for your own individual use. We can call that an afternoon, Monday to Friday. We can give this an afternoon icon or an evening icon or a nighttime icon. We can say that's going to start at 12. It's going to start at 1800. We're going to have a break of 30 minutes. We can say that it will be active. You can then associate them with those individuals. If you do also have our payroll SuiteApp, and we can of course talk to you about that separately, we're also able to enter allowances into the timesheet. So if you do have subsistence, on-call allowances, those sorts of things, those can also be entered into the timesheet, and then that will flow through into the payroll bundle. Once the timesheets have then been approved or submitted for approval, they can go in for approval. We can go and look at approving those time and allowances in here. If we take away the approver ID, I can look at Charles on here. And then when we are approving that, we've got the option. These are all going to be approved. I could reject it, or I could leave it in its current state. I can do that again, either in MyPay, or if I wanted to, I could come in, I can see this timesheet on here. I can have a look at what is actually going on in NetSuite, and then I can approve it from there. We all know that timesheets are necessary for the successful running of businesses that do need them. It isn't going to take away the need to do them. However, if we can make it easier for the end user to get it right in the first place with that level of control, we know that that will offer optimizations and efficiencies that will see benefits for the whole business. Thank you very much for your time today. Wayne, I'll pass it back to you so we can look at some of the interpretation examples that we've seen previously.
Thank you, Tristan. Just bear with me while I share my screen again. Okay, so let's look at some of the, I suppose, the real world scenarios where MyPay does differ from the Employee Centre license. So there's a few examples here. So employee 1 works 48 hours in a week and any additional time over the 40 hours is paid at an overtime rate of 1.5 times. The employee just needs to enter 48 hours into MyPay. MyPay will interpret that as 40 hours and at the standard rate, and then 8 hours at the overtime rate of 1.5 times. Employee 2 is paid overtime at 1.5 times if they work after 6 p.m. Now, this employee starts at 2 p.m. and finishes at 9. The employee just needs to enter the start time and 7 hours. MyPay will interpret this as 4 hours at the standard rate and then 3 hours at the overtime rate of 1.5 times. Last example. So employee 3 timesheets all his hours and has a lunch break deducted. If they start after 4 p.m., the lunch break is taken from their night rate, otherwise from their day rate. So MyPay will create the translated time records directly into NetSuite. And if you have our Infinet Cloud Payroll, as Tristan mentioned, these will be seamlessly processed and can yield to the penny accuracy reports for project P&Ls and grant-based claims as well. And lastly, if you're paying the staff on an hourly rate, then we will pay that through the payroll software based on that. Right, we also recognise that employees may also need to perform other tasks through the NetSuite environment. So MyPay also includes OCR expenses, so leave management, requesting annual leave, sick leave, and approving of that, has the payroll integration so they can access their pay slips in the P60s, and it also provides self-service. They can change their name, their address, and their bank account details, and those sorts of things. Lastly, so in terms of pricing, so MyPay, it's pretty straightforward, £69 per employee per annum, and it comes in bundles of 10. Now, there will be a professional services cost to implement, and that is based on the functionality that you need and the complexity of your rules around timesheeting. So, in summary, dealing with timesheets, it needs to be efficient, effective, and accurate. There will still be challenges, as Tristan mentioned earlier. You still need to enter the time, but if we can remove as many of the manual processes as possible and provide control over what the timesheeter can enter, it goes a long way towards making this a much more workable process. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box at the bottom there, and we're happy to answer those. We will be sending out a copy of the recording over the coming days. And if you want to have a chat to us, by all means, please feel free to email us at uksales@infinitecloud.com. Right, so based on that, have a great day, and we'll look forward to chatting to you in the future. Thank you very much for your time.